Hello, and welcome to Bandstand, the official podcast of the Tennessee Bandmasters Association. I'm your host, David Adelit, and I hope you'll join us on a journey through the past, present, and future of bands in Tennessee. We'll delve into the rich history of Tennessee bands, uncovering the hidden gems and legendary figures who shaped the state's band landscape. We'll survey the present, where you'll meet the movers and shakers of today, gaining insights from their expertise and experiences. And we'll gaze towards the future, exploring the exciting possibilities that await Tennessee's school bands. Hey everyone, this is David Adelit. Hope you enjoyed last week's part 1 about choosing concert band music. Today's part, the wrap-up, is in 2 segments. There's a segment with Dr. Liddell and Dr. Krause, where we finish our conversation from last week. And the second part is me talking with Reggie Coleman about his experience as a young teacher choosing concert band music. So I hope you enjoy both parts of today's podcast.
One of the things that I don't want to harp on the youth, the younger folks, but sometimes new does not mean better.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the newest, there's a reason some of these older, the war horses, they're there because they were really good pieces of music. Elva Kay at Mississippi State, she did a great clinic a few years ago on the forgotten pieces that people just forgot. We forgot about there's a reason these were the war horses. These were the standard, you know. And I'm not an old guy. I believe in programming too. Dr. Walnick at I think he's at Austin P. He did
Austin P.
About how to program. So you pick something old, something new, something borrowed, and a march. That was his program. And it you know, it makes sense. You know, you pick something old, something borrowed, meaning like a transcription. Maybe from orchestra, from a choir, maybe, and then something new, and then a march, and you get. I think you pretty much, if you do that, the variety of what you're playing, I think will aid, instead of just saying I just want to pick this new. Some guys think, well, if I pick something new, the judges haven't heard it, so therefore right. I'm gonna get better results. I don't know if I put much faith into that philosophy.
I agree. And back to this point, I remember what my thing was, guys. And that's why you have to start early. Back to that idea of, can you get it in time? The older I got, the more I started planning spring repertoire at the end of the spring before or in the summer. And hopefully by September, I've pretty much got it nailed down, you know. I mean, I might not have everything on the spring concert pick, but I'm at least the sort of things that where I hang my hat, so to speak, I've got those picked well in advance, so I can get it. I can borrow it from somebody or whatever. And then there's another topic here too that I think goes back to the sense of coaching kids to prepare them for the repertoire choices, because that's the other side of this too, right? It's not just picking what they like, but how do we help them have more discerning tastes? Something as I got older that became more of a theme for me was getting the kids to understand their relationship with music in their band class, and flipping the switch from them seeking to be entertained by your music choices to understanding their role as entertainer or performer or as communicator. Has that come up with you all? That idea of, don't look to this piece to be entertained. Don't like this piece because the part's fun. What can you do as a musician to create a musical experience for everybody in this room and for the audience?
I think you have to take them there first and say, trust me. And I always relate it to the experience of C.S. Lewis, The Chronicles of Narnia, where you find this magical place, you take everybody there, and then you lose it. And then you spend the rest of your time trying to get back to that magical place. So for me, every new programming experience, every new concert experience is how do we get back to that where everybody feels it and then it disappears into the ether when the performance is over and everybody remembers what an experience that was, audience and performers. Um, uh, uh, there's a person I'm trying to remember the name. She taught oral skills at Vanderbilt for many years. Marianne Ploger. Marianne Ploger talks about that moment in a performance when everyone knows it's good and then it just disappears. So I found that to be a really good analogy. But yeah, I think you have to take them there and lead them to that experience with a series of repertoire that suits their ability, and they have one of those experiences that goes beyond the notes, and then they want to do that again. So I think the philosophical, like human affective aesthetic part of what we do, you have to lead them to the experience, hope that they drink the water, and then take them there again. And when they have that experience, they'll want to go back there. I think you talked about those affective experiences that you had at Franklin, and how that propelled the students to want to pursue that again. So for me, that's where it is. Like, and for me as a person, I remember when I was an undergrad, I wrote a paper in Oklahoma State University. I wrote a paper for my history class on affective and aesthetics in music, in band music. And ever since then, I've been really interested in that topic. I remember my college wind ensemble director talking about beauty in music. And, I'd come from a small town in central Oklahoma and I'd never really thought about that. The hardest thing I ever played was a second suite, by Gustav Holst. And suddenly we're playing, these things that have very different textures and requirements for the performers, and really kind of challenge the psyche in a way that's very interesting. So yeah, I think for me that's where it is, going to those unknown places.
Ollie, anything on that?
That's what we all. It's the drug, man. It's the musical, the high that you get when you get to that peak experience, when you get the goosebumps, and it's rare, but when it happens, especially in the ensemble, uh, it's something special with the performer and the audience. We all are together in this moment we want it. It's like a drug. We want it, and we want to. It's a good drug though. We want to share it. We want the kids to experience. I want to experience, and I've had those. It's not many where it's like we're all in the same zone. It's like oh my goodness. It's I've been there, and it's undescribable. Indescribable. But I would really, how do I get the kids there? It's through performance, through playing lots of different music. I think that's what you like you said earlier, you got to open their ears up, listening and performing. Lots of that does so many different things. First off, they're gonna become better sight readers. They're gonna be better musicians in general, just by performing lots of different music, getting them hear lots of different pieces of music. They'll get there.
Yep. Barry, you and I talked this morning about the Floyds, and we alluded to this a little bit. Watching Richard Floyd rehearse a wind ensemble, and I've seen him rehearse much more than I have Cheryl, it's not about the rightness or the correctness. That's only a portal to get to a musical experience, right? And I think so often, this is probably happening in education in a way that's not healthy, is that we're so into the standardized testing and that, did you get the right, did you get the answer correct? And when that filters into your band class, I think that's a dangerous thing. And so I tried to sort of shelter the kids from that a little bit, right? And to let them know that it was okay that in this class, it's more about what we're going to create together, right? This experience that we're going to create, and that we're after beauty, and we're after a musically expressive experience, and not did you get it right so that we can make a one, And so I don't know. I didn't always take all my groups to concert festival. At Franklin, I just took the wind ensemble, and we only did it we didn't do it every year I was there, because I was worried about them becoming too hung up on the score of it all. You know what I mean? So now I'm just rambling a little bit, but
No, I think that's important, and that, it begs the question, what purpose does that serve? Assessment serves a purpose. It's a valid indicator of progress of an ensemble when the adjudication panel is effective, and then we can talk about rating inflation and all the other things. Like, assessment is fraught with difficulty and inconsistencies, but it can be a valuable tool when used in the right way. But then again, do you select repertoire to satisfy the machine, or do you select repertoire? As Ollie was indicating, he didn't have any concern for what rating. It was like, this is what's appropriate for my group, and I tend to err on that side. I think that we have this correctness about us because in our age we have examples of the Marine Band just a few key clicks away playing the first suite in E flat. Our kids are never going to sound like that recording. It's just not possible because every one of those players is a professional player. So we are dealing with education. So, the standard of, learning, and it's okay for that oboe player to sound like that right now because that's where they are in their development. And what does a good high school oboe player sound like at that level on that piece? And it may not be perfect. But yeah, I think striving for excellence and what we have this culture of record quality correctness that's inaccurate to the realities of what we're doing. And I think, as we were talking this morning, David, that kind of inhibits a lot of groups from putting themselves out there and going, I'm going to take a chance, and we really need to learn and develop, and I'm going to be vulnerable. For fear of being judged incorrectly.
Two things, Ollie, that kind of goes back to your growth thing from the very beginning. You talked about it's about the growth, and also what you just said, Dr. Krause, the correctness. I was at a national level concert performance a few years ago with high school bands, middle school bands, and a group performed. They are a national level high school ensemble, and I've never wanted to leave a concert as much as I did in that moment. It sounds terrible for me to say that, but the performance was so dry, and this wasn't at Midwest. This was at another event, and the performance was so dry and without any sense of warmth or feeling. And I just felt bad for the kids because looking at their faces as they were on stage, they didn't seem to be enjoying the music. They didn't seem to be enjoying each other. It was something that I just didn't enjoy at all. And maybe I should cut this part out of the podcast. I'm not naming names on who it was, but I would just caution directors to not make a choice that should be relegated to the byproduct side of this, as Ollie said earlier. Make a choice that has to do with your kids having a great musical experience.
Some of what I do when I pick a piece of music, for example, my students usually pick one of the pieces. Sometimes I let them pick it, but I'll give them a choice. These are the pieces that we can play. And this usually happens. Actually, for us, it's going to happen the day after Martin Luther King Day, and I will that next day we're listening, and we're listening. Hey, and you guys are gonna pick. Sometimes they'll pick. It's funny. They'll pick the more difficult piece. I remember this piece they picked was really really hard, and I'm like, but they picked it. But
I
amazingly,
love your little head scratch. Maybe we need to have a video podcast after all.
They played the crap out of it. And it's because the students will play what they like. Students, if they're into it, they're gonna play it. If they're sometimes, but there are some pieces that I don't care if they like it or not. Sometimes you need this medicine too. But this wasn't bad literature. I'm just saying it was extremely difficult, and it's up to me to as it's up to directors to pick. Okay, this is appropriate. Appropriate as far as it's a good piece of literature. Not just we can play it, and we get to it's a subjectivity there. But is it a good piece of literature? It's a good composition, and if you do that and say, hey, which one you guys want to play, and they'll go and pick, and that's what we'll play. That's happened. The better performances are the pieces our better performances over the years have been pieces where the students they just generally loved it. And generally just enjoy playing it, and not just because I can go into percussion. Some of the greatest literature that we have in our band world, we consider the greatest literature. Percussion parts are like there's it's like and then it's like another 2 hours of rest, and then they come in for another,
Uh-huh.
and that's some of the greats. It's not much, but I think that's important. And that's when you get to gain those experiences from, and the students get better. I do believe in high, unattainable, ridiculous standards. Um, Marine Band is the standard. Eastman, conducted by Frederick Fennell. If we don't sound like that, we are horrible. That's that's my thinking. I'm dead serious. That's my thinking, and that's the way I get my kids to think. We are horrible if we don't sound like Eastman. Uh, and it's that high standard that we're always striving for, and you striving for, we'll never get there. That's why I say it's a ridiculous standard. We'll never ever get there. My jazz band, we have to sound like Duke Ellington. If we don't sound like Lincoln Center under Winton, we're horrible. It's not good. So we'll never ever
The razor's
sound
edge
like,
with
but
Dr. Ollie
Yeah.
Liddell. No, I'm
it'll
all about that
never.
too. And on the other side, this just takes us out of the literature choice conversation and more into culture building. But that's why you have to have such a strong culture with your group to be able to have those standards, because
Mhm.
otherwise the kids have such trouble dealing with, I don't want to say failure, but the struggles of achieving something on that level. So Ollie, I've never seen your band perform. I've never watched you rehearse, but I'm sure you are incredible at just planting those seeds that allow the kids to feel supported as you're pursuing those
Oh
incredibly high
yes,
standards.
you have to. What did I say? It's high standards, but also it's growth. That's what I'm really looking for.
Yeah.
I'm
Carol Dweck. Carol Dweck.
it's how do you get better? We'll never. What's you aim for the moon, you'll land in the stars or whatever. We're getting. I praise improvement. Um, the group I'm most excited about. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I enjoy teaching kids that come in that are like ninth grade and they're like, more than I enjoy teaching kids that come in and already at a high level. I enjoy seeing this kid that went from oh my God, I could just go on and on. Of
Yeah.
so many students of kids that couldn't pull it, as my dad said, they couldn't blow their nose with two snot rags. But they, but
You can't
and
play dead in a
seeing
cowboy
them
movie.
achieve, um, just improve. And I know that this kid is gonna be a lover of music for the rest of their lives. They're gonna want to play the rest of their lives. We're way off topic, but
No, but I
I
don't think so though, because I think the long term effect of music as an art form depends on the kind of choices and the way of thinking you're talking about now. Because that kid that you're talking about might, we're running out of time again. This is hilarious. That kid that you're talking about that goes from sort of in the middle to above average, that kid might not be a professional musician, but that kid might be a lawyer or a doctor or a teacher or have great influence over somebody's band in 30 years.
Mhm.
And so they deserve that kind of experience just as much as the kids that are in your win ensemble that are your all-state players. That's a big thing for me, is that the music advocacy down the road, downstream of what we do in education now.
Agreed. Yeah, impacting lives, and even at the college level, I have students that go out and go into other professions, and those were students who were just great members of my second ensemble, not music majors, and they're out doing something related to arts, or they're still performing and contributing in a way that's productive as an audience member rather than as a performer, perhaps. But yeah, I agree. The impact of that goes a long way. I still have students when I taught high school in Texas that get in touch with me, and every once in a while there's a Facebook post tagging that group of directors at that time,
Mm.
like the best years at Waco High School. And it's like, when I was there, I was a young upstart teacher. I had no idea, but that was impactful for so many students to have that kind of experience and do those things. So you never know.
Yep. Okay, final thoughts.
Final thought is this is important work. Um, Picking your music for your group is one of the most important aspects of your preparation for performance. And that's at any level, at any ensemble. Picking the right literature is the most important. I think it's more important than anything. How you we can get into the weeds of how you prepare your group and how you well, I like to do sectionals, or I do what if you don't have the right literature, you're doomed for destruction and failure. This is
Yep.
the most important thing. So this, I think, is the most important aspect. There he is. Got to pick the right literature first.
Dr. Kraus?
Yeah, I think this is really important, and I try to adopt this in my philosophy too. If you want to play a linkage posy, what are the pieces that, by grade level could lead up to an experience like that? So, if you have a 4-year rotation of literature and you want to play linkage posy when you're freshmen or seniors, what could you program in between there? What Granger options could be similar in nature and experience the same kind of harmonic or technical requirements or solo exposure? So my admonition to young directors is make a list of pieces that address the same compositional technique or have the same texture or composed in the same way. And what could I address the same thing on a grade 3 level? That's just spiral curriculum that I could on a grade 5 level. If I want to play that piece, what could I program maybe a year before that would lead them to understanding that better? And then you create a curriculum, a repertoire that kind of moves through their process and it rotates.
Love it. This podcast is about creating connections. And I hope that what we can do is create connections between directors to have these kind of conversations and to work together and to bounce ideas off each other so that they can end up with their students having a great musical experience based on the choices that they made. And I hope everybody understands the amount of time that it takes to make the right choice as you're going through this process. Dr. Ollie Liddell, Dr. Barry Kraus, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I've loved every single second of it. And yeah, just thanks so much for being on this Bandstand podcast. I mean, Ollie, you're a co-host, so you're a regular here for us. And Dr. Kraus, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks very much.
Okay, until next time.
All right.
All right, guys.
Okay, Reggie Coleman, one of our Bandstand co-hosts. We are going to talk more about this topic of choosing music for your bands. Now, Reggie, I think you've been teaching for 6 years, or you're in your 6th year, so your perspective is way different than mine or Dr. Liddell or Dr. Kraus. And so I'd like to just hear your initial thoughts on this, and then let's get into some topics about this.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. I'm glad to be here. So, first of all, yes, I'm in my 6th year teaching, but the funny thing is, when it comes to picking music for my groups, I've only been doing that for about 4 years because my first 2 years I was itinerant. So I taught at 2 different schools. I went to both schools every day. And I pretty much only taught beginning band, which was great. I love beginning band. It's my favorite thing about my job, right? But because of that, I had no idea how to program, especially for 7th and 8th grade, and especially for things like CPA, because I was like, all right, I know Anasazi, and I know Dragon Slayer, and I know Midnight Mission. These are all great. All these 6th grade, beginning bands pieces. But the past 4 years, I've had to really think about, okay, how do I go about finding music? What are the things that I need to be looking at? And, what are what's the criteria for a good piece for my band? And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Those are great questions. That's the questions I think we should all be asking. So what are your answers? Because we can rack this segment up in no time if you've got all the answers.
Right. So, I want to start with the most important thing. Is the most important thing that your band sounds great or the kids like the music? I feel like that's one of the two, right? It's either the band sounds great or the kids like the music. Now, if you can do both, great. And I feel like mostly that's probably what happens, right? But where do you prioritize? And obviously, for me, I think it is the band sounds great. Hopefully, the kids like the music. So I'm curious what you think, or maybe
I would say, and this was a topic too we talked about in the other segment. Is the other thing I think people consider is, can I make a 1 on it?
Right.
Which I would say, and this was Dr. Ollie said it really well, that getting a 1 is a byproduct of everything else. That that shouldn't necessarily be your goal. That's what happens if you choose well and if you train your kids well. Like if you do those two things, then you're probably going to make a one. So, and that's a thing for me. Just as we're starting this podcast, and I don't want this to be off-putting for anybody that's listening that might feel strongly about that. I think there are times when you do have to consider the external stamp of approval of a one, that you can go back to your administrator and, if you're in your first year teaching and say, hey, I got a one at the concert festival, then he knows he doesn't need a new band director the next year, or she knows.
Got a nice trophy, all shiny.
So I think there is a fraction of the time where you should consider that. But I think mostly in the scope of, if you look at somebody's career, that should be a minimal part of the decision making. That it should be, for me, are the kids going to have a musical experience? Like when we're done with this, are they going to feel like their time was well spent? And part of that is, do they like it, as you mentioned? And part of it is, do they sound good? And I would say, do they know they sound good? Because when the kids know, then it really resonates with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I've never thought about, well, obviously I've thought about, do they like it or do they sound good, but do they know? And I think a good question is, how do they know they sound good? Mm-hmm. Is it because we talk about, right? Is it because I just say, hey, you guys sound great? Or is it because they hear the things that we're talking about every day, as far as phrasing and dynamics and articulations and tone production and tone quality and balance, and then they say, I guess that's like perfect case scenario, right? Is that they're like, wait a minute, that's really good. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that if they hear it from us, they're like, okay, so this is the standard, right? So it's like, hey, we sound great, here we go. For example, on our last concert, and this was, I don't want to jump too quick, but this was like some of the pitfalls, right, that I have seen in my short time as a band director. But our eighth graders played Of Locks and Thistles by Christina Huss and I think it's considered a 2, maybe 2.5. And it took some convincing for me to play it, because it looked like it had a lot going on, but it's so beautiful. And there's just so many moving parts and it's so flowing. And it's like, it puts you in that just like warm mood for a holiday, winter concert. And so, we put it on the program. And by like week 4, I was like, and it's just because there was too much going on for our group. Like, there was just too much for them to focus on, because you had like 4 different counter melodies going on at the same time as the main melody, which when I'm listening to it, I'm like, oh my God, it's going to sound so good. And I'll listen to that oboe and all this, and how the flute just kind of does its own thing. And yeah, it sounds great when they're doing it, but we were not quite ready for that. And I thought we were, and I was wrong. And that's okay.
Yep.
But the funny thing is that the kids knew we weren't ready either.
And so you probably trained them really well then.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Tastes. Like, they were like, at the end of the concert, we didn't really talk about it up to the concert. I was just like, hey, let's just get it ready. Let's just get it ready. And then we can all talk about it. And after the concert, we always do our concert reflections. And it's like, all right, what's one piece we could have performed better? Raise your hand for Savavant. Raise your hand for Above the World. Of Locks and Thistles. Oof. Everybody, all the hands go up. And I was like, why? And they were like, there was just so much going on. I was like, exactly. I was like, I'm glad you guys know that. And that's not your fault. It's mine. That's my fault, because I put it in front of you. And I didn't take it away when I realized it was not going to work. And so when you realize that's happening, when is it too late to punt? How do you assess that quicker? Yeah.
That's a great question. I've made similar mistakes. Even my last year at Siegel, I made some mistakes programming wise. So it's not just relegated to young teachers or whatever. It's like old salty people like me can do it too. It's like making a bet sometimes. You have to make a decision based on incomplete knowledge or incomplete information. So it's like betting a little bit, and it's a gamble. And sometimes it works out, and sometimes it doesn't. So my question to you would be now, going through that, if you're willing to be vulnerable with this, now that you
Absolutely.
went through that, what is the lesson for next time?
I think the lesson for next time, what's funny though, is that I feel like I've learned this lesson before.
It takes a while
And
sometimes.
it really does. When you're looking for music, and especially like when you're looking on Pepper, sometimes it's so difficult to gauge, even though they've got the preview on there, sometimes you miss stuff. And I think I just need to take my time and start earlier, first of all, because the earlier you start, the more time you have to change.
Are you sure you weren't in this Zoom with me and Dr. Liddell and Dr. Krause? This is
No,
ridiculous.
I'm
This is
just,
great.
I'm just, I'm a psychic. Um, and cause I definitely waited too long to start this piece, and I was kind of desperate. And one of the things that particular that really threw me through a loop was how important the euphonium part was when we don't have a euphonium.
Yep, that'll get you.
And I was like, oh, it's doubled here in the tenor sax. Oh, but bassoon has it here. But guess what? We have one tenor sax and one bassoon. So guess
Yeah,
what? You still couldn't hear that part.
yeah,
And so taking my time to really look at each line, right? Look at each line. Like,
yep,
okay, there's the flutes. Cool. Oboes, awesome. Saxophones, whatever. Trombones, where are we going up to? We got any fifth positions? We got high E flats, trombones. Do we know that scale? Um, okay, euphonium super important. Do we have any euphoniums? No. Cool. Next piece.
yep.
you
That's
know,
right.
not, oh, it's doubled here, it'll be
Do it
fine.
next
Like,
year.
no. It's supposed to be a euphonium player. We don't have it. Move on.
Yeah,
And
put it in the next year pile.
put it in the, hey, love this piece. Let's go. Like, we got it. Cool. Let's do it next year. Do it in 2 years. We'll do it soon. It's a good piece of music. It deserves to be played. Just not this year. And so that's it for me. Like patience, just patience in selecting repertoire. Like, and just comb through those parts, and really think about it. Like, is this I you know your flute section, you know your clarinet, you know your kids. Can they do this or can they not?
Yep.
And they really ponder that. And I think that's what I've learned. And I think we just finished picking our CPA music, and I think that um, I learned that lesson, and I spent like 2 full weeks like really thinking about what we wanted to do.
Yeah. Uh, this came up in the other segment, and that is you have to start really early. And sometimes you'll get lucky, and you can pick a piece like that.
Yeah,
It just happens. The group is solid enough across all sections, or whatever. You got lucky. You're living your life right. But sometimes it takes forever, and uh, that's what Dr. Liddell was talking about. Just the amount of time that it takes to make the right pick, because and I think you'd agree with me on this. It's really about, it's almost, if not the most important, pretty much the most important decisions we make as directors are not what color the shirts are or the logos, or
right.
but what music you play, because that's what the kids live with every day.
hmm
98% of their experience is the choices of music that you're having them play. And sometimes they'll stay in band where they like the music and they don't like you. You know what I mean? Like it
Absolutely,
you
they
can
sure
you
will.
can do so much for your program from a recruiting standpoint, to create a sense of vitality in your program by choosing music that works for the kids. And that doesn't necessarily just mean that the kids like it, because that's just candy sometimes. You have to pick pieces that are like vegetables too, and then teach them to like the broccoli. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
that
Yeah.
also gives energy to your program. So taking the time to to start early enough to make the right choice, and then also just echoing. I love that you said this. Going through every single line, you got to do it. You got to go through every line
Yeah.
and make sure it works for every kid. Um, and so those two things that you said were absolute gold. And I wish I had done that a lot more in my career than I did sometimes.
Well,
So
the good thing about having all you guys talk to, it's like I still fall in those pits that you guys fell in. And but I can sometimes I'm able to get out a little quicker because I've got
Yeah.
all of the support system. It's a beautiful thing. Very thankful for it.
Well, and that's what this podcast is about. It's about creating connections and using those connections to make us all better. A rising tide lifts all boats. So that's the aim for this podcast is that, and that's why you're on here, because you're a person that's connected. And that leads me to my next point. What can our associations, whether it's TBA or MTSBOA
Hmm.
or West Tennessee or TMEA, what can we do for the young teachers to help them with this thing that we've already said is the most important thing you do?
That's a great question, and I'm going to start with something that's like huge, right? Like this, what I'm about to say is like probably super complicated. I don't know how you start it or what, but the most amazing resource to me over the past 3 weeks has been Texas's UIL
Yeah.
website. I Texas something I can't remember right now. Sorry, I'll look it up. Um, but they have cataloged, right, every piece that is played at CPA, their CPA, and you can search by year, you can search by
Mm-hmm.
region or like school size and grade, and it tells you, hey, in 2017, 50 bands took Night Fury by Carol Britton Chambers. Oh, maybe that piece is good then. you
Yeah.
know, um, 47 took Colliding Visions by Brian Balmages. Maybe that piece is good then. Maybe it works. And those are two pieces that I had actually not heard of. And but now they're in my cart right now
Yeah.
for J.W. Pepper, and I'm going to buy them. And now that just gives you titles, right? That doesn't give you any perspective or anything, but it gives you titles and it tells you. And if you start to see those patterns, it's like, oh, so how amazing would it be if Tennessee had something similar?
Yeah.
Even if it was just one region to start, I don't know, but we have these. It can't be that difficult. We have these databases where you can go to tmea.com and TNMEA and you click something and it shows you what the people are playing.
Yeah.
So you're not just on J.W. Pepper flying blind. There's good things about flying blind, right? Just to get in there and find some stuff. That's how we found our
Explore.
march this year. Doing Carol Britton Chambers March for CPA, and we found that on the Pepper, just looking around, and that can work. But I found Japanese pictures on the UIL website,
Yeah.
and I found all kinds of stuff there. And then once you get to there, then you can move on to the other stuff. But I think that's one thing is like just having some sort of record
That's really good.
for people to, because we all have I got one right here actually. We all have the little pamphlets from saying all where all the people played and in festival, and that's great. If you can get one, but how do I know what Ollie Liddell's playing?
Yeah.
How do I know what Megan Christian's playing if I'm not asking them? Or those other band directors out there that are doing great things, but we don't know they're doing great things because we're so far away. But that's one thing I can be like, oh, whoa, someone in East Tennessee, oh, Cascade, I heard that school. Cascade Middle took Colliding Visions. Oh, maybe we should too. Let's figure that out.
Yeah.
And I think that's one big step, right? And then I think the next step would just be, I think a lot of I don't think I've ever been to a PD session on selecting repertoire. Maybe because everyone just kind of passes by us because we all just do it so nonchalantly. Not nonchalantly, not that's not what I meant, but
Maybe
we
this
do
should
it.
be your first session to present.
Maybe so. I've
There
never
you
presented
go.
a session. I've always wanted to, and I never
Yeah.
knew. I thought about like buzzing for brass, but I'm really passionate about that. Maybe I will. I
There you go.
appreciate that. Yeah, I got to get myself a nice co-host, maybe a high school person to come help me out. But yeah, I would love to, and because it's something that I'm still learning about. I'm by no means perfect, but I'm so passionate about it because, like you said, it's the most important thing that we can do.
Yeah.
Like whatever you pick, your students are only going to play so many things while you're in your band program. And if it's not quality, then why are they playing it?
Yeah.
And if they can't play it, if it's inappropriate, then why are they playing it?
Yeah.
Both ways. If it's too easy, too hard, right? Or not fun.
Yep.
And
then the zero
but
topic
that's
of
one big thing right there.
how do you prepare them? And this might be more of a high school thing because the ceiling gets a lot higher really quick. How do you prepare them, and how do you train their ears to be ready for something like I said Persichetti in the last segment, so something like Persichetti. Like, what are you doing for, as far as the music education side of what we do as directors, not just error correction, but what are you doing to foster a culture that will allow the kids to be able to receive things that are a stretch for them? So
Right.
I love this idea of sort of taking our TBA list, which is not a recommended list. It's more of a approved list, right? The TBA list
Yeah,
is
it's like,
so
hey,
huge.
here's what is graded.
Yeah, here's what won't get you in trouble you can play. That doesn't necessarily help a young teacher with what's. So maybe we need to take that list and create a list inside a list. So maybe there are
Yes.
some things in there that are, okay, here's grade 2. Maybe these are recommended for first year teachers or teachers
Right.
with 2 to 5 years of experience or whatever, just things
Yeah.
that are kind of easy to work up, so that there's a little bit of granular detail in that list that can be a resource, because it gets to be decision overload, right? You pull that list up and it's forever long and
Yeah.
all
I
this.
literally have it open on the screen. I
Yeah,
have it open on the screen right here. And it's
and you
just,
don't know where
it's
to
like, where do
start.
I even start?
Yeah. And if you don't start early, then you're screwed. If you don't start early, then you're just making a choice out of desperation, and that's not a good place to be for you or your kids. So that's an idea that's come up in this talk today. Is that's
Starting
why you have to
early.
start early, so you can have enough time to vet your choices. But I think we can do more with professional development sessions like the one that you're going to do. We've just decided,
For sure.
and then working on that list some too. And one of the things that I've thought about is, how do we get people to know about? Does everybody know about the Texas list or the NBA recommended list? Like that can be part of your PD as well. Is
Absolutely.
here are the
Like
places to
there's
look.
resources. Where are those resources at? Like, thank goodness for Benjamin Easley, Nolensville High School.
Yep.
He's one of the, like, hey, check this website out. And I was like, why didn't you tell me about this earlier?
Yeah. Maybe that's another thing too. Maybe every grand division in the state should do a required PD for first year teachers.
Yes.
And it should be something like, here's the list for this, here's this, and just the things that first year teachers need to just go ahead and get that in their hands immediately. And then
Yeah.
continue on with other development sessions that are sort of building off of that. But maybe that's a thing, like you need these 5 websites to be familiar with as you're a first year teacher, whether it's music choice or whatever.
And even things I've learned recently on my own, like looking on Pepper, when I'm looking for something, for like 2 years, I always had them sorted by alphabetical order because I just didn't think about it. And then one day I was like, can I change this? And I clicked, I was like, oh, it's like you can go from top selling. Why would I want to see this in alphabetical order? Who wants to see this in alphabetical order? I have so many bones to pick with
No,
J.W.
you
Pepper.
want to see the
I
Yelp.
won't air those out. I
You want
won't
to see
air
the
those out
Yelp
right
review,
here.
right?
Goodness gracious. But like even something as small as that, like, oh, look at these are pieces I've heard of before. Okay.
Yeah.
You know.
And my fear is, well, when I was in school at MTSU in the 80s and early 90s, the required courses probably on the education side weren't as numerous as what's there now. I think they've had to reduce the music course load. I could be wrong when I'm saying this because I don't know, but I think this is my perception. They've had to reduce the things that are sort of band courses because of other things. And so
Yeah, I think so too. I think it used to, yeah.
we had courses like this where plan a concert program. I think it was called band organization. It was the class,
Mm-hmm.
and it was about picking literature. And here are lists and here are resources and things like this. So I came out with a certain amount of awareness of that I fear that I don't know that it's not happening now, but my perception is it's not. There's just not enough space for it in the curriculum anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely not the same curriculum as when you and your colleagues and your classmates were in school. And part of it's like that 4 year rush, like get them in there and get them out. And I will say, so when I was there at MTSU, we did do a project, like a long range curriculum design project. And it was like the most fun thing we've ever done because it was like we finally felt like band directors.
Yeah.
We were like programming, like
It's
you
wonderful.
taught like a middle and a high school, and you like, okay, what are the things you want them to play, right? So everyone's Lincolnshire Posy and Russian Christmas music and Kentucky 1800, and but what we didn't talk about, because there was no time, how to really pick that music, right? Not just because, okay, I've got something that sounds medieval, I've got something slow, and I have something fast, and I have an overture. Cool. Next, boom, holiday concert. Okay, I got dancing candy canes. I got clarinet, winter rock, and whatever it may be. Or I got Christmas festival, sleigh ride, and Russian Christmas music. Got it done. But what we didn't talk about was, what if your group can't play that?
What if you don't have a euphonium?
What if you don't have euphonium, right? And only one bassoon and one tenor sax.
Yeah.
And that's all when we talked. You said, "Hey, I remember playing Russian Christmas music. I want to play that with my band. I'll put it on there. Boom." But guess what? Only like 30% of us are going to get to do that.
Yeah.
So
and that's
definitely
something
something that's lacking.
About. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. No, I was just saying, like, you're right. Like, that's something that there might have been time before, but is definitely not now. It's like how to pick that stuff.
I think also two things. We teach how we were taught. That's our sort of whatever our band experience was as kids. We tend to sort of do that when we become directors. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, and that has nothing to do with the quality of the teaching. But if you grew up in a great program that's playing grade 6, you can't teach your grade 2 middle school band the same way. So gotta be careful about that. And then also just picking pieces that you like is dangerous, because you may love this piece, you had a great experience playing this, you want to try it with your kids, but you don't have a euphonium, or you don't have a clarinet player that's competent above in the upper tessitura. Then not only are you not going to enjoy the piece, more importantly, your kids aren't going to enjoy the piece.
Exactly.
And if they don't enjoy the piece, then it's likely they won't sign up for band the next year. And then music as an art form begins to wither because of choices that we made as teachers and what music we played with our groups. So that's the thing for me, is just,
absolutely,
again, the downstream effects of our music choices.
Yes. And when they don't feel successful, and you can see it in their eyes, and it hurts, like I saw it in their eyes this past concert. I was like, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. It's okay.
And then they don't sell as much fruit, and it's harder to get parent volunteers. And, just
like,
how you manage that.
I did that calendar fundraiser for this.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, this has been great, Reggie. I've enjoyed this very much, and I can't wait to get into the just the weeds on some of these things that we've talked about. So I'm excited about you being on the podcast as a co-host. I think you're going to be a great teacher, and I'm certainly really enjoying getting to know you. So thanks for being on.
Thank you. As to you, David, thank you for doing this. Thank you for having this idea, and I am just so happy to be a part of it. I love that we're getting stuff out there. I just can't wait to be able to connect Tennessee through this podcast.
Thanks for listening to Bandstand. If you have topic suggestions or need to get in touch with us, email us at tbabandstandpodcast@gmail.com. Your input is important to us, and if you have a topic you'd like us to discuss about the past, present, or future of Tennessee bands, please let us know. Again, that email is tbabandstandpodcast@gmail.com. Right now, we're broadcasting on Spotify and YouTube, so please subscribe, review, and rate. Box 5, please. And more importantly, share this podcast with your friends. See you next week.